بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون صدق الله العظيم وقال الله عز وجل في آية أخرى يا أيها الذين آمنوا عليكم أنفسكم لا يضركم من ضل إذا اهتديتم صدق الله العظيم. The month of Ramadan is fast approaching, and this blessed month, if it is understood in the correct sense, only then will we be able to benefit from it. Every Thursdays we have our Tazkiyah programs, and today the timing was changed. And seeing how the month of Ramadan is extremely close, Tazkiyah and Ramadan are not two separate entities. Rather, Tazkiyah is incorporated in every single command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To consider Tazkiyah to be an independent entity, something which is completely independent from Islam or Deen, is completely wrong. Every single aspect of the Sharia has two parts to it, the external part and the internal part. The external part is what we see, what we observe, what we do, and the internal part is the part of which is related to Tazkiyah. In this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions the objective of fasting. That all those who believe, O believers, O mu'mineen, O muslimin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made fasting compulsory upon you just as He has made fasting compulsory upon the people of the past. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may become muttaqeen. You may become God-fearing. You may adopt the quality of taqwa. What does the word taqwa mean? It means to abstain from carrying out the unlawful desires of our nafs. This is the meaning of taqwa. In other words, to carry out all the do's and abstain from all the don'ts. In this month, great ulama ikram, the likes of Shaykh al-Islam, Hazrat Mufti Taqi Usmani Sahib Damat Barakatum, the likes of my teacher and Shaykh al-Hadith, Hazrat Maulana Salim Dora Sahib Damat Barakatum, they beautifully mentioned that this month, the month of Ramadan, Allah has given us this month and He has made it a training ground. A training ground where we can nurture and mold our nafs and make it do what Allah wants us to do. How is this possible? Fasting simply means to abstain from food and drink and fulfilling one's lawful desires with his wife. These three things make up the meaning of fasting. So all of these three things are halal outside the month of Ramadan. But during the month of Ramadan, from a particular time to a particular time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made these lawful things unlawful. Again, things which were lawful outside the month of Ramadan have now become unlawful from dawn to sunset. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is nurturing us. Allah is teaching us that, O my servants, those things which were lawful for you, food is lawful for you, drink is lawful for you, and to fulfill one's lawful desires with his spouse is lawful outside the month of Ramadan. These things are lawful for you, but you must abstain from these three things because I am saying so. And no one questions. To the point where Shaykh al-Islam beautifully says, if someone was offered $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 to break his fast, majority of the Muslims would not do it because they realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching me. Such a very precious command cannot be broken for materialistic and worldly items. 10,000 is even far-fetched. Even if a person is offered 50,000, 100,000, even then, he will not break his fast because he knows that my fast is solely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this realization that I cannot do those things which were lawful for me outside the month of Ramadan, inside this month, because Allah is watching me. Allah is fully aware of my condition of my heart, my intentions, everything that I do. So in this month, a person, he breaks the passions of his nafs. He breaks the desires of his nafs. And for 11 months, a person is involved and he's busy in his worldly life. From 8 to 4 he has to work. Then he comes home and he has to look after his kids, help them with their homework, take the wife and carry out her necessities as well. So for 11 months, a person is busy in his worldly routine. And because of this worldly routine, a person is unable to give the masjid its due time. A person is unable to give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the time that Allah deserves. And a person is unable to carry out the objective of his life as he should. But in this month, Allah uses this month to change everything. So for 11 months, many a times a person, because of his busy worldly routine, he tends to lose his direction. And instead of going towards Allah, he's going away from Allah. More time is being spent in those things which will lead a person away from Allah rather than in those things which lead a person towards Allah. In this month, the realization, the concept, a person's mindset, it completely changes. And 24 hours a day, from morning till evening, he is fully aware that I am fasting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is for this reason the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned in the hadith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He Himself, He gives Himself, His own being, as a compensation for fasting. Because other worships, salah, people can see, hajj, people can see, zakat, people can see, all the worships, people can see. But the worship of fasting, no one can see, apart from this man, the person who's fasting, and apart from who he's fasting for, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because this command, this obligation, no one else is aware of, no one else can see, no one has knowledge of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I myself will either give my being as a compensation, and I will give this person reward because he has made this command exclusively for me. So a person in this month, he becomes more closer to Allah. He is able to break those habits which his nafs has been so accustomed to during the 11 months period. In this month, now he knows that in the morning I cannot eat, in the afternoon I cannot eat, at sunset I will break my fast. And if we calculate the timings of every single salah, Fajr, Zuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, it'll probably come to approximately 1 and 1.5 hours, maybe even 2 hours for some. So the same amount of time that we spend on a normal day performing our 5 daily salawat, we are performing now 20 rakat tarawih in the evening with the same amount of time. So those salah, which normally for an average person are considered to be burdensome, it's very difficult for a person to spend even 2 minutes after the Fard salah inside the masjid. For some it's 2 minutes, for some it's 5 minutes, for some it's 10 minutes. It becomes very difficult. But in this month, those people who find normal salawat outside the month of Ramadan very burdensome, in this month, Allah gives them stamina. Allah gives them this awareness, and Allah gives them this courage to perform 20 rakat tarawih inside the masjid. The same individual who found it very difficult to do otherwise is now performing 20 rakat taraweeh inside the masjid. There are many reasons for this. Reason number one, because of the blessings of the month of Ramadan. Reason number two, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has clearly mentioned, إِذَا جَاءَ رَمَضَانَ فُتِحَتْ أَبْوَابُ الْجَنَّةِ وَغُلِّقَتْ أَبْوَابُ النَّارِ. The doors of Jannah open when the month of Ramadan arrives, and likewise, the rebellious shayateen are locked up. So the doors of Jannah are open. This means to do good actions become easy. And the rebellious shayateen are locked up. To abstain from wrong also becomes easy. So an individual, he needs to use this month and spend it accordingly and in accordance with how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants him to spend it. If he does so, Shah Wali al-Muhaddith Dahlawi rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned that the manner that a person spends this month, that's how he will spend the remaining 11 months. This month is a reflection of the upcoming 11 months that he will pass through in his life. If they are spent in dhikr, that means the effects of dhikr will remain for the remaining 11 months. If he spends them in the masjid, if he spends them abstaining from the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this will continue in the upcoming 11 months. And if a person gives into his nafs, and let's assume a person, despite severe hunger, despite severe thirst, there's the concept that Allah is watching me, but there's another concept, and that is if a person was to eat or drink deliberately, he knows there's a very strict kafara and a very strict expiation that for one fast that a person breaks deliberately, intentionally, he must fast 60 fasts consecutively. So no one will dare to break his fast deliberately. And if a person unintentionally, forgetfully breaks his fast, then the Shari'i ruling is that fast is not broken, rather he should continue to fast because it happened out of forgetfulness. So in this blessed month, the first 10 days are the days of mercy, awwaluhu rahmah, wa awsatuhu maghfirah, and the second 10 days are the days of forgiveness, wa akhiruhu itqun minan nar, and the last 10 days are the days of deliverance from the hellfire. So if a person is able to spend his 11 months correctly, then Shaykh al-Hadith Hazrat Maulana Zakaria rahimahullah mentions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will shower his blessings, his mercies upon this person from the first of Ramadan. And if a person did not spend his 11 months correctly, then for the first 10 days he must make effort. Come the 11th day, then he will be worthy of Allah's forgiveness. And let's assume this person was very far from Islam, far from deen. And many people who normally are not seen in the masjid, in the month of Ramadan, they are granted tawfiq. So these people, they have to make an effort of 20 days. Come the 21st day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises itqun minan nar, deliverance from the hellfire. This is how much Allah's mercy is descending in this month in abundance. But again, the objective of the month of Ramadan is not to only fast, to have iftar parties, to enjoy nice meals, and to carry on with our day. It is لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, that you develop taqwa. That means you develop this quality of learning how to stay away from those things which Allah wants you to stay away from. So Allah is telling us, in this month, I am giving you training. If you can stay away from halal things because of my command, when the month of Ramadan finishes, this training session will also finish. Why can you not stay away from those things which are unlawful? These things are lawful, and you can stay away from these things. Now, come Eid day, on the day of Eid, as soon as Eid sets in, our disobediences, they start. Once again, the nafs is let loose. The nafs is let loose. It's like a person was waiting, or he was restricted to a jail cell, and now he has been released from that jail cell, and now he's continuing with his unlawful desires. May Allah protect. So this cycle of abstaining from those things which Allah wants to abstain, which Allah wants us to abstain from, this cycle must continue even after the month of Ramadan until we breathe our last. So all of those individuals who have been living a very hectic life and have a very hectic timetable, schedule due to their worldly activities, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us an opportunity in this month to turn towards Him, to focus more towards Him, and this is through His divine blessing. If this month was not there, would we remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the capacity that normally an individual does? It's like saying, if the month of Ramadan was not there, would the Huffaz revise their Quran? Ask the Huffaz. Majority of the Huffaz will say that it is due to the blessing of the month of Ramadan that I am able to revise my Quran. And if this month was not there, then years would pass and a person will not revise his Quran. So in respect to how we should spend our month of Ramadan, Shaykh al-Islam Hazrat Mufti Taqi Usmani Sahab beautifully mentions 4 points. Number 1, each and every single person should try his best to perform as much optional nawafil, salawat, as possible. For example, tahajjud. It was a practice of the Prophet ﷺ to perform 8 rak'at tahajjud. This was his general practice. Otherwise, even 2 would suffice, 4 would suffice, 6 would suffice. 10 would also suffice. But 8 was a general practice. Now, every single person, every single believer, he wakes up for suhood. So if a person is waking up for suhood, why not wake up an extra 10, 15 minutes, an extra 20 minutes, and perform this great worship? So tahajjud. Then we have ishraq. Whoever recites 2 or 4 rakat ishraq, when or after the sun has already set, approximately 10 to 15 minutes after the sun has risen, then it comes in the hadith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant this person the reward of 1 hajj and umrah. And the words tammatan, tammatan, tammatan have been mentioned in the hadith, which signify that the complete reward of 1 hajj and umrah will be given to this individual. In respect to awabin, the nawafil salawat, which is performed after the maghrib salah. So it starts from 6 rakat and it extends all the way to 20. So if that's difficult, then we should try to perform 6 rakat. And a very simple and easy way of doing this is after the 3 rakat farz maghrib, 2 sunnah maghrib we already perform, and likewise we already performed 2 nafil as it is. If we were to add an extra 2, so 2, 4, 6, Shaykh al-Islam Mufti Taqi Usmani Sahab, he mentions that a person, not only will he get the reward of performing his maghrib sunnah, but he'll also get the reward of performing awabin. So number 1, nawafil salawat. Number 2, tilawat of the Quran. Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, every single year in the month of Ramadan, they would revise the Quran and recite it to one another. So Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam would be reciting and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam would be listening. And likewise, vice versa, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam would be reciting and Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam would be listening. So the amount of Quran which had been revealed, that much amount would be recited by both Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So we should make a point of reciting the Quran regularly in this month. Number 1, nawafil and optional salawat. 2, reciting the Quran. 3, excessive dhikr, remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a lot of virtues have come in respect to the 3rd kalima, subhanallahi walhamdulillahi wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Allahumma inni as'aluka al-jannah wa a'udhu bika minan nar. La ilaha illallah, astaghfirullah. These are just some examples. So excessive dhikr. And number 4, dua, excessive supplication and dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is along with fasting. This is along with Salatul Taraweeh. And this is along with all the other necessary obligations that we must carry out. So let me just recap again. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this blessed month so that we can adopt taqwa. By adopting taqwa, a person is able to train his nafs. If he was to spend this month correctly, in the upcoming 11 months, at least to a degree, his nafs will be trained and he'll make his nafs understand that if you can do this, and you can do this, and you are able to do this in the month of Ramadan, then you are also able to do this outside the month of Ramadan in the upcoming 11 months. This is the objective, and by doing so, a person becomes close to Allah, a person acquires Allah's love, a person acquires Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure, and this is the ultimate objective of a person's life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to understand and practice. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Sadaqallahu al-azim.